Kuwait says it has intercepted a number of Iranian missiles and drones launched towards its territory. Qatar, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE have condemned the attack, while the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council has called it a treacherous act. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says its attack seen here was in response to US strikes on its southern coastal areas near Bandar Abbas, adding it was targeting the US airbase from which the attack was launched. Despite the retaliatory attacks overnight, ceasefire negotiations continue, but the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has announced further sanctions targeting Iran on Thursday. He imposed sanctions on a newly created Gulf Strait Authority, which Iran set up to manage ship navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. Bessent also said that any partners in the tolling of the strait would also be penalized. We begin with Patty Cohen, who's at the White House. Patty, so the U.S. announcing new sanctions on Iran, even as negotiations to end the war continue. Bring us up to speed with the latest from there.
That's right. As you know, Iran created a governmental body of sorts to control the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. has now put sanctions on that organization, and we heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He put on social media that any company, any individual, any group doing business with that organization could also face sanctions. Now, there's some questions about that. Obviously, how are they going to find out about those transactions if they're not run through U.S. banks, which they wouldn't be. But we do expect that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is going to be here in the briefing room in about 3 hours, obviously trying to send a message. And this has been a point of contention for the Trump administration. Any indication that Iran and Oman are going to control that strait, they say, is a non-starter. We even heard U.S. President Donald Trump say that he might have to bomb Oman if they got involved, to which a Democratic senator has just put on social media that that is just another mistake after mistake, claiming that the Trump administration is panicking. Obviously, Oman, an ally of the United States. But this has been a point from every administration official in this Trump White House. We heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio repeatedly saying when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, it has to be open and it has to be under international law. No one controls that strait.
All right, Patty, stay with us. We're going to get the view from Tehran now and bring Al-Miqdad al-Ruhayd, who's in the Iranian capital, for us. Al-Miqdad, Iran already under the weight of heavy U.S. sanctions. What impact will these new sanctions on the authority managing activity through the strait have?
Well, actually, despite that sanctions from the United States authorities, regarding the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, we are seeing right now the force ground, the IRGC Navy, actually enforcing and tightening their control even tighter than before. They are saying that in the latest statement this afternoon that they were 26 ships have passed and transited through that strategic waterway through the full coordination with the IRGC Navy, and also they are sending a very strong message for each vessels to follow and coordinate with the IRGC Navy, having their permits, and also coordinate with the exact designated routes. And if any vessel, if any company disobey that routes, they will spare no force to attack that vessels to protect their what they call their sovereignty and right to control that strategic waterway. Definitely that sanctions will affect the maritime traffic. We do know that this is one of the most strategic shipping lane in the world, where a fifth of the world energy and oil and also gas passes through this strategic waterway. And despite all that tension, right now the authorities on the ground, on the vicinity of the Strait of Hormuz, are emphasizing the idea of their control on that strategic waterway. And we do have a diplomatic message from a couple of days ago. They are right now engaging with their coastal country, which is Oman, to projecting or to defining that framework between both countries.
Al-Miqdad al-Ruhayd in Tehran, thank you very much for that. Patty, let me come back to you. So where does this all leave the Iran-US negotiations, and is the American position moving any closer to some of Iran's demands?
We don't think so. We heard from U.S. President Donald Trump just yesterday, Wednesday, saying that he thinks Iran is trying to wait him out. that he'd be concerned about the midterm elections that coming up in November. And his words were, "I don't care about the midterms." Now, there could be some movement. We believe the Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar is going to be in Washington on Friday. Not sure that he's going to be here, but it has been announced that he will be at the State Department meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Obviously, the Pakistanis have been the key negotiator, one of the key negotiators in this discussion. Whether that signals movement, we don't know. We've gotten very mixed messages from the president himself just Saturday saying that the memorandum of understanding was basically done. Just a few details had to be worked out, and now saying that he doesn't like Iran's offer and he's going to wait for a better one. So not quite clear exactly where the negotiations stand now, but they could be moving forward with the Pakistani foreign minister coming to Washington on Friday.
Patty, thank you very much for now. Patty Cohen live for us there at the White House.